Hey guys, it's Evan with Underhill Bonsai, and today I'm very fortunate to have Adam Lavigne from Orlando, Florida, correct?
Orlando, Florida.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Adam's Art and Bonsai.
Adam's Art and Bonsai?
Yep.
We're going to have to pass the mic back and forth.
Website is adamaskwhy.com. So.
Yep. If you guys are not familiar and haven't seen his blog site, your blog site's been around for quite some time.
Yeah, there's almost 600 articles on the site. Yeah.
How many years?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm not good with numbers.
Yeah, so you lost track of how long it's been, but I will tell you that I have read your articles back as far as I remember 10 years ago when I started getting into bonsai. So you actually inspired me to work with Yaupon Hollies. That's why we have a group of them here. And so I did follow some of your guidelines and stuff in the past, and then I've also talked to some other experts that worked with them as well, namely Jonas Dupuis. He's got a beautiful Yaupon Holly.
Yeah.
So I've kind of gotten some different guidelines, and just today I wanted to pull some of these up here and get your opinion on them, and you critique them and tell me what work you could see fit, and I can tell you the history on them if you really want to know.
Okay.
So this little guy here, I actually found him at an old landscape nursery.
Yeah, that's the best place to find them.
Yep, and so they had a whole bunch of these Yaupons. They were roughly about 20 years old, and they had never been messed with. And so the owner,
like that tall.
the owner just didn't do anything. They got all bushy and crazy. And I wrote a couple of articles on this guy, and the other bigger guy over there we're going to bring up in a moment. But yeah, I just went with a typical style here and see what you think there, because it's like it reminds me a little bit of some stuff that you would have done with a really characteristic, more animalistic looking shape.
Needs a little work on the back. It's a little naked on the back.
Yeah.
Overall, it's good branch placement. There aren't any really big cuts on it, so that's awesome. How well do the wounds heal here?
For here, so I think if we look, there's a wound, the biggest one, and I can bring it in for the camera. You see right there?
Yep.
Yeah, that's like the biggest one on this tree. There's a bigger one on that other guy over there that I'll show you. Yeah, it's kind of in there. It's hard to see. But where the tree was its tallest, so it would probably another foot or so higher than this.
Yeah.
And it was cut there, and then there's another hard cut here where this branch kind of formed off of that. The root, the nabari and everything down here is actually very nice. It wraps underneath the tree. It's just mossed over at the moment, just from watering from the summer. But yeah, I do agree that the backside it needs some help. I need to wire these branches down.
Yep.
But I really haven't had any fuss from this tree.
Well, you can fix that in a season.
Yeah.
One of the great things about the Yaupon, or Ilex vomitoria shillings, is the shillings, I assume.
Yeah, they all are.
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ones, and it's like you can't tell the difference unless there's several female ones that have berries.
So tell us a little bit about the shillings in general. Just give the people who don't know much about this species, kind of give us a readout of that.
So the Ilex shillings, or shillings like we call them in Orlando, we don't really use Yaupon, even though that's kind of where it started being called Yaupon.
Yeah.
And then they moved to Oklahoma, the American Indians.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a male. Ilex are male and female. So it will flower in the springtime, but it doesn't create berries. A regular Ilex vomitoria, the female is probably about 20-25 foot tree, and the male is maybe about 9-10 feet tall, which is kind of weird because the pollen for the male has to get up to the female, so it doesn't make sense to me. The shillings is what they consider to be the meatball in their landscape design. Mm-hmm. So basically, like a boxwood is a round ball. They're very drought tolerant, but in nature they grow in the swamps. So it's that dichotomy where in a pot you can't water too much, but in the ground they can handle it, or they can handle xeriscape effect. Xeriscape. What else about them? You can make tea out of the leaves.
Yep. Which is the vomitoria part.
Well, no.
Actually, is it the berries or the
leaves? The berries are the emetic, which makes you throw up. So don't eat the berries.
Okay.
But the leaves, it was a traditional drink of the native, the Seminole tribe, and they called it the black drink. They would mix it with some other stuff, and it was the first drinking game in the United States. So the idea before the battle, to cleanse themselves, they would drink so much of this highly caffeinated tea that would make them vomit, and they purify their souls. And
It's such a weird
Yeah.
thing, but I mean that's
yeah,
a
well,
lot
it's,
of ritualistic stuff like
Yes.
that. So
and
yeah.
there's a couple of commercial companies that sell Yaupon tea now.
All right, so this guy came from that same nursery that the little tiny guy came from, and this is one of those trees that I was kind of looking through, and I turned. You know how you're looking at bonsai material, and you're like, okay,
Yep,
is this
yep,
one
yep.
good? Is this? I turned this one, and I went, holy shit! And so when I saw it, I was like, this is like a tree of life design, kind of
Yeah.
like oak tree here. And so
That he brings Animal Kingdom Disney into the whole Tree of Life thing.
it does,
Yeah.
yeah. It felt very like Disney World, which would make sense for Orlando for you. You know,
Yep.
you're familiar. But yeah, the roots are a little rough on this side, as you know, old Yaupons do twisted root things. But it's getting better. There's some cool stuff happening in here that can be cut back to in the future. So what do you think?
Well, let's see. So it's growing back this, so that's why those are long for the audience.
Yep, I had weakness in that branch. I repotted it into this lovely Byron Myrick container, and I was prepping it for Bonsai Central. We just talked about a couple moments ago off camera.
Yep.
And then it just died back right here, and I was like, you son of a.
Yeah.
So I had to grow all this back out to not lose this branch section.
And that's a common thing with the Yaupons is it's almost like an azalea. The woody part becomes too thick on the inside of the branch, and it can't move the fluids back up and down, so it just chokes itself off and dies. So if you see these in the landscape, perfect, and then suddenly there's a bare spot, that's usually why, because the branch is just old and
Yeah, that's what I
unmovable.
heard.
Yep.
Some people argue that they desiccate at a certain age. Like they'll kind of get a little too geriatric in their material, and then they'll just kind of give up sections. I
Yeah.
haven't had real issues. If this plant is as old as they say it is,
Yep.
this is the age in which they start dying, right?
Well, no, I've collected ones
That's
that
what I mean.
are this
Yeah.
big,
That are monsters.
the dwarf ones, which are trunks that big. So
Yeah.
it just depends on where they're growing and what the ground is like, and
Yeah.
so as a bonsai, it should last longer.
Theoretically, yeah.
You just have to keep on top of it.
Yep. Obviously, my bench, the sun hits here.
Yeah, yeah, we can tell.
Yep. And because I did that for this branch in particular, I kept
Yeah.
it one-sided.
Well, the one thing I would look at would be the wounds,
Yeah. So
especially
yeah,
this one up on top here, right on that.
on that piece,
on that
you think
piece
that
right
could
there.
get weak?
Yeah, so obviously you cut it every once in a while to make it regrow.
Yeah, I need to skin the sides.
Yep.
Okay, the cambium. Yeah, because that's some of those wounds you were asking about. How do they heal?
Yeah.
And that one, you see where we're at so far. And this was allowed. I allowed it to run like this every year, and then I
Yep.
cut it back nice and hard in the spring. So this is its blowout season right now because we're in November.
Remember?
So for Florida, do you guys wait a little bit longer?
No, I tend to stop working on them at the end of October.
Okay.
So November, I'm not going to touch these. I'm going to go back to my tropicals, actually.
Yeah, because the tropicals need to be prepped for next year.
Yeah, well, no, I grow them all year long in Orlando.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a different beast down in Orlando, Florida. So, but yeah, so we need to work on these wounds, on the roots, is what we're
Yep.
looking at. But overall, I mean, like I told you, this is one of my babies because it was one of the first trees that taught me, like a Yaupon Holly, that taught me some stuff about how they grow.
Yeah, I had one that was similar, more of a baseball instead of, this one has a little bit better taper, and stupidly I sold it.
Well, there you go.
So-
And then you take for granted how
Oh yeah, yeah.
rare this is for a Yaupon to look like this. So, yeah, cool little tree. So this is a show hen that I actually found at that same garden center. It's going to be a common trope because
Yeah.
when you see 30 plus Yaupon hollies that have been in pots forever, you're going to find something.
And yes, but you should just buy them all.
That's what I did.
I found this place in it's Apopka, Florida,
Yeah.
and they were grown into the ground, and that's going to be a workshop, not this year, but next year,
Oh yeah, they make excellent
or
workshop
not next
material.
year, but the year after. So.
Yeah, that's a fun little tree. So what do you think as far as front, movement? I kind of cut it approximately what I thought, but it's been blowing out this year.
Yeah, so I might front maybe like there. I would probably get rid of that.
You want to get rid of this lower branch entirely?
Yeah, because it's like a pencil or a Sharpie,
Okay.
and you're not moving that at all. One of the things about Yaupon is new branches are extremely flexible. You could do the cosmic style with new
With these-
branches.
that would be interesting.
But
Not this guy.
Yeah,
He's
not this
really
guy.
suited for it.
But it's a weird thing. Once you cut the tip, the branch wants to lignify, and it just you can have the same branch that's been cut and the same branch that's grown, and it'll just snap, or the other one you tied into knots. So yeah, I think you need to run it and get some thickness on some of these other branches here.
Okay. Yeah, he's just been kind of sitting on the back burner because I was like, he's a cool
Yeah.
little tree. So I think what I'll do then is I'll take all my thinner branches while they're still soft in the
Yes.
spring and
Yep.
just wire them nice and flat.
Yep. But yeah, that has real potential.
Yeah, it's a fun little tree. Cool. And as a side note, I've been organically fertilizing the majority of these trees.
Yes, yeah.
So I don't push them too hard
I haven't done the research, but I do think that is more beneficial
than pushing them
than
synthetic.
pushing it with synthetic.
Yeah. That's what I was kind of figuring. I've been doing that with Acer rubrum as well because Acer
Okay.
rubrum is so aggressive.
Has it cut down on the dieback?
Yes.
Oh.
There's some things. Yeah. There's some things. I've been
There
doing a
we
little bit
go.
of research on this.
There we
thing.
go.
Yeah. So.
Ooh, that's an old one.
Yeah, that's an old one. So what do you think on that one? This one didn't. So give you some context, guys. So when I find these Yaupons, they're just bush. They're shrubs, like you said, a meatball. They're just like a round, just shrub. And sometimes they're cut like that, and then if they're in a container, they kind of max out, and then they just kind of grow that shape.
Yep.
And so whenever I prep these for bonsai, I go in and I just take out stuff I really know it's not going to contribute to my design. And so there's some hard cuts on here that just didn't like it.
And sometimes you get that dieback like that.
Yep.
Because it's just too lignified, too woody, and it just okay. But a lot of times you'll get a new shoot right there, right at the base of that cut. So if you do that in the future, instead of cutting it here, cut it closer, and it'll
It should have budded right there if it would have cut closer.
like that was obviously one that was cut right there, so it budded right underneath.
It's kind of an interesting little trunk. It almost looks like an olive.
Well, this looks like to me, and I go nursery diving all the time.
Yeah.
And we have you have them, fire ants.
Oh yeah.
So this looks like it may have been a fire ant colony, and this is what you see, that kind of
That webbed into it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting intervention for this tree for sure.
Yeah.
And it maybe it had some influence on the way that this cambium rolled onto this branch too.
Yep.
And then it made these little valleys in here that's just crap growing in it. So what would you do with this situation here? Do you think you keep cutting back and kind of encouraging younger stuff, or kind of go with a wild style on it, more ragged? What do you think?
Now, this is an example of how flexible those are. There's people out there looking at me like, oh my God, he's going to break that branch.
Mm-hmm.
But you could work that and totally switch back.
Yeah, boxwoods are very similar to that too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
So I would I might just keep the trunk as it is, and enjoy the impermanence of some of these branches.
Because you think they'll die?
Well, they may. This one obviously will rot away, and you might
Yeah.
get some rotting in the trunk and such like that. But it can heal.
Yeah.
You can zoom in on that.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
yeah.
This is what I consider this color dormant growth, which it's an oxymoron.
Interesting.
But when
Yeah.
you get this color growth, it's growing just a little bit because it needs just a little bit more of those solar panels. But it's not going to grow much beyond until.
I was just figuring it was weak.
No, that's it's weak growth. You can call it weak growth
But in theory, it's just going to be a dormant, slower. Okay.
until springtime comes along.
So this has the potential to really take off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. And I was worried about that because I was like, well, this might just go on me. I don't know.
Yeah. So with the Yaupon, if you get totally green growth and big leaves, it's going to die probably.
Oh, because it's
Yes.
fighting for that last.
So when you have that purple on the stem, and you get that really deep red on the tips, and that deep red, put this in full sun. That deep red acts as a sunscreen, so it won't burn the leaf, but it will stimulate the leaf to grow more.
So get this guy as much sun as possible in the spring.
Yeah,
Cool.
right there.
So the last one, this is another chunker.
Yeah.
So just real quick, so in Orlando, I don't know how hard y'all's freezes get.
We have not had a freeze in 10 years or so.
Beautiful. Okay, so
Yeah.
anyway.
So yeah, we used to be zone 9
Used
A
to
and
be.
B. Now we're zone 10 A and B,
Interesting.
which means everyone has been pushed down.
Yep.
So, but what's interesting though is where Weigert's
Yeah, they do
in
get a little
North
bit colder.
Fort Myers, he's in the more in the middle of the state, and he and I would text back and forth. How cold did you get? Oh, I got this cold. How cold did you
It's
get?
weird.
Yeah.
And so one of the things too is that the lake, so Lake Pontchartrain, New Orleans versus here, it's 10-degree difference from here too.
Cooler.
Yeah, it's actually colder here in New Orleans. It's almost like how you're experiencing it. So they don't get a
Yeah.
lot of frost down there.
Well,
So-
I still can't grow Japanese maple. So
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
that's called zone envy.
yeah, zone envy. Yeah.
Yep. So for this tree, and just as a like, not particular about this tree, but when we get a hard freeze here, this is from my experience.
Mm-hmm.
When it's cold and it's like, but it got 17 here last year. It was pretty crazy for Louisiana. It didn't snow though, which was also weird.
So what's weird to me is you're wearing flannel and I'm still like this.
Because it was chilly this morning.
Chilly. This morning.
Yeah, exactly. But so yeah, when it gets cold, I like the frost. I put them on the ground, and I will let the frost completely encapsulate this. All the leaves will have like the moisture on it; they'll be frozen.
Yep.
And then in the spring, I find that they flower harder when experiencing that. That's from
Well,
my take.
that makes sense because usually flower is those chill hours, so the flowering is encouraged by that.
Yeah. So my theory on that is not too far off. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
because I noticed whenever it get cold, I was like, oh, my Yaupons, and I'm like, but they're
Does it
native.
does it drop the foliage?
Never.
Really? Okay.
No, it'll get frozen solid. You'll go up to it and be like little ice cubes on everything. And it'll
So
stay.
the only thing that I have read on them is in the cold you need to protect it from the wind.
Yeah, wind chill. Because
And
what I
it
normally
desiccates the tips.
what I normally do for wind chill and stuff is that I have a fence and I have my bonsai benches, so I just put them under the bench, and that solves everything.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of have that in my mind for winter stuff coming up here soon in Louisiana. If you guys are located in this part of the country, wind chill is a issue for burning leaves. I know up north where people are already using cold frames. To
Cold
protect
frames,
from,
yep.
Yeah, so it's a little bit back and forth, but Louisiana and then in Florida, you guys don't need to really worry too much.
No,
it still can
no.
happen with y'all's tropicals, but not as extreme as it could be here.
Yeah, our tropicals is what, although I have not protected in about 5 years. So
That's another theory there I've heard
Yeah.
about. Guy Guidry's actually going through a whole thing. We'll talk about that later when he's here.
now to get off of the ilex, if you guys have boxwoods,
Yeah.
extreme sunlight, cold temperatures, and wind turns the chlorophyll into beta carotene. So if you ever see that bronzing in the
That's bad.
that's bad because you could lose that whole branch.
Yeah.
So put him in the shade, out of the wind.
Like that big monster one
Oh,
we got
yeah,
out there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he needs to go into the greenhouse during the chilliest times because he's got yellow tips everywhere. He's
Yes.
growing right now. So anyway, so this is another chunkster. I'm having a hard time finding the front on this tree. So what do you think? Lots of fun options.
Well, the joke is you put it into a round pot. But
Yeah. You put a bonsai into a round container as opposed to a rectangle, and that should solve all your issues because every side is the front. But when you have a rectangle container like this, obviously one of your broad sides of the container is your front.
I'm thinking probably somewhere around here is the front
Okay.
because it's thickest, so it could either be there or there, but the structure is bringing us this way.
Yeah.
And part of the illusion of bonsai is to make the tree appear bigger than it is. So if you have a tree that is leaning back, it doesn't look quite as big as one that's leaning forward.
Yeah.
And that's a whole another video.
Yeah. So
How,
this
how
guy,
to trick people's brains.
this guy here was cut at the same time as the other ragged-looking one.
Oh.
So that tells you the durability. And I cut this one. I shit you not. I cut this last year.
Really?
That's how fast they grow for us.
Well, I'd probably have this much, but
Yep. So there you go. And I don't know because you guys don't get that winter. Because when I tell people that I've cut this tree to a stump, that's like whoa. But in Florida, you guys get even faster.
But we have. Do you get anthracnose, the little black spots on them?
Nope.
Yeah, that's a bad thing for us. I have to treat. I don't like prophylactic fungicides or insecticides, but these in the springtime, just before the rainy season, I put down systemic fungicide, and keeps it from. It'll totally defoliate the tree. That's how bad that.
There's
that
other
fungus
species we have, like local hawthorns will do that too.
Yeah.
They'll get a spotty fungus on it.
Yeah.
So, from according to what we're hearing, that's not an issue for Louisianians, but for other parts.
Next hurricane that comes through, it'll blow across into Florida. We didn't have it until Hurricane Charlie.
Oh wow! So
Yeah.
it's a spreading disease that just migrated. And
Yep,
that
yep.
sucks. But yeah,
Came from Africa. Or
so
something like
systemic fungicide should help out.
that. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. So yeah, thanks for hanging out, talking about Yaupons. Any closing remarks about Yaupons you'd like to make before we kind of wrap up?
Well, if you're going to make the tea, it tastes better if you put it in a black cast iron frying pan and you toast them first, and it just tastes so much better.
Yeah.
Fire roasted.
I heard there's actually a company like Yaupon or a tea company now.
Yeah, it's in Orlando.
Yep,
They
there you
just
go.
they just bought a huge. Well, what was the nursery? I think it might have been an olive nursery, or it's probably citrus because citrus is dying in Florida.
Yeah.
And then they planted,
Converted it.
Yaupons.
Just
and-
Yaupon Holly.
Yeah.
That's kind of goofy.
Yeah,
'cause-
and the male puts out more caffeine, and the younger the shoots, the better it tastes.
Cool. But yeah, thanks, man, for talking about these Yaupons. I know, like I told you, like I read your articles and I was like, let's try them out. And
I think the first real article is on when I had a trip to the Cincinnati Club, and I went and found 40 of them and chopped them all, and I mean literally the same day chopped the bottom and chopped the top and put them into pots just like this for workshop.
yeah. So yeah, I read some articles of yours and I was like, let's give them a shot. And I've been happy with them. So it's been 10 years since I've been working with these guys myself, and they've been awesome. So, but yeah, thanks for hanging out, talking bonsai with me. It's always a pleasure to have people stop
Yep.
by.
Thank you.
But yeah, y'all have a good one. We'll see y'all in the next video.